Good morning. Welcome to the sermon and the time of worship this morning to all at Banyul Network of Uniting Churches. A very warm good morning to you. My name is Dietrich, for those of you who don't know me, and I am a CPE student this year. By the time you're watching this, on Sunday the 7th of June, it will be in the morning and it will be Trinity Sunday according to the liturgical calendar that you follow. Well, I will be preaching. This is a pre-recorded sermon, but I will be speaking on the Trinity, but specifically how the three passages that are in the lectionary can reshape our thinking of what it means to be a community. For the Trinity is essentially a community of many things it is, without going into the complexities. Now, before I start, I would like to mention there are a lot of things going on in the world right now that make it seem like a dark place that it is. The protests in the USA, and of course the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. There is a sense of uncertainty, unease, anxiety, disunity. So my first reflection is that in Pentecost, the time where the disciples gathered, which we celebrated last week in the liturgical calendar, was a unique turning point. It was then in the first Pentecost in Acts 2, but you could say it is now for us in 2020. The Holy Spirit came in power to give birth, essentially to start and kickstart a mission and put into motion what we call the Christian church. And essentially at Pentecost, it was a group of disciples from all around the nations that gathered in Jerusalem in the upper room, and they were united. At that time, the Holy Spirit came upon them and tongues like fire, as you may remember, and they were gifted with the ability to speak not in their own language, but in tongues, which is languages for other people to understand and hear. Like I said, the Holy Spirit was given during this time to essentially start the mission that Jesus left, which we will look at in Matthew 28, the Great Commission. And so during this time, my first reflection is the Holy Spirit, one of the three persons in the Trinity, has been given. Just as he came many, many years ago in Pentecost, is given for us now. And we need him because essentially we are longing for that presence in this dark time. Like a fire, as I was reflecting symbolically, it can be a terrifying thing. You've seen the pictures of cars burning, and obviously in Australia this year we've had a tough season with bushfires. But if you ever seen a kind of a small flame and a candle, it can be calming, it can be a presence, and it can be a reminder. God has given us himself, a presence. And the church is gathered with many nations in contrast to what we're seeing in the world outside of us. We're seeing division more than we ever have. We're seeing lines of aggressive division and disunity and racism, something that is a painful thing to bear, especially as if you're like me, you come from an ethnic background, you've grown up in Australia, and you've experienced the joys and the hope and the blessings of what it means to live harmonious with other people groups. This week we have been reminded, kind of even confronted by the stark reality of racism. And so again, in Trinity Sunday, may I give you this reflection that God has given us a hope in the church that the church of all people are peoples united of all different tribes and tongues. Indeed, Jew and Gentile themselves were at war more than any other group throughout history, hating each other. But Christ has come to redeem and to unite both. What does Trinity Sunday mean for us this Sunday? And that's an important reflection. Well, I've sneakily decided to use all three passages that are in the lectionary. They're not long, so I do encourage you to go and have a look at them yourselves if you can. But I will do a quick recap on what I think these reflections mean for us today. Psalm 8, and in one of the verses in the Psalm 8 says, "From the lips of infants you have ordained praise." From the lips of infants you have ordained praise. Well, we'll move on to 1 Corinthians 13. The theme of this infant and child continues with the contrast of knowing in part and knowing in full. Verse 11 of chapter 13 in Paul's letter writes, "Once I was a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child, and when I became man, or when I grew up, I put these childish things away." So my reflection for us today, and the third passage is the Great Commission itself, I've realized that we need to learn to live, love, learn like children. I know the 1 Corinthians passage suggests that we should put away our childish ways, but that's in the context of growing up. Jesus does mention in regards to faith that we should come to him as children, like children in our faith, and that is what a child represents. My reflection for us today is that we've kind of been exposed to a lot of evil. And the thing with children is that there is a sense of innocence and purity and curiosity. If you've ever met a child who just, non-stop asks the question, why? Well, three things. To live like children means to come in faith, to go to God and realize that he is the all-knowing God, and we are to be as innocent and trust him. We're to learn like him because we are, at the end of the day, disciples. And in the Great Commission, Jesus has commissioned us to continue as disciples and to go and to make disciples. And the way we're meant to do that is not to pretend and project that we know everything, but actually to be like a child, humble and teachable. And finally, especially more than ever, we need to love as children. What does this mean? Well, we might be aged, as many of us are. You may be seasoned in your faith, and you may be even in a stage of life where you are towards the end. Don't let this stop you from loving like a child. Children are innocent. They trust people. They make friends. They love their mum and their dad, and they just love life. And again, they have this simplicity about them. What might it mean to love like a child during this pandemic and now racial division? I leave that with you to think and to reflect. And I make that my prayer, that we can continue to be this church that is united on this Trinity Sunday and grow in our faith and see things that only Jesus can reveal for us. Amen.